We have to first.
You can still.
I can still.
Okay.
And I'm Luigi. And let's just wait for the stream and then we can begin. So remember, reminders, POIs are encouraged. 7-minute speeches. Please maintain decorum and don't speak too loud during the round. And also speak very loudly since the podium is over there. And us over here, we're from the Philippines and from Singapore and Vietnam. So our ears are a bit hard on hearing.
That's a bit uncalled for.
That's a true thing.
What?
No, us old. Us old.
So it's already gone.
Okay.
Alright.
Let's go.
Good.
Ready?
Thank you.
Okay. Alright, all good. So I'll read out motion once and we can start the round. On the motion, this House believes that developing countries facing brain drain should instate a travel restriction on immigration. We now call on the Prime Minister to start this debate. Here.
Is everyone ready? Then my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, we are living in a world where immigrants are pouring out of their home countries.
how developed the other Western countries are. Now, thirdly, how this will benefit people who actually emigrate. So, for people who actually emigrate, this creates a false mentality where they expect for all their problems to be solved when they move to other countries. However, we tell you that this is not the case. So, for educated people who move to other countries, who believe that there's still this idea of xenophobia in the current society right now, and at the end, they see their talents wasted, they see their mental health destroyed in this more economically developed countries, while they could have used their talents in helping their country out of chaos, in helping their country stop these civil wars. While not educated people, they go to other countries and they're used as a lower level service, while also they could have helped their country progress. And for all of the reasons above, I am very proud to propose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prime Minister, for that speech. To open the case beside opposition and their clash, we call on the Leader of Opposition for opening opposition. Here.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So basically, the opening government side is talking about because in order to help your own country, then you need to stay in the and you are very talented, and you need to stay in the country and help the country to grow. But however, in our side, we believe that this is morally incorrect to force those people to stay inside their countries, and we believe that the freedom to migrate into other countries is important for those people. And now, in my speech, I will give some rebuttals and framing and arguments. And first is the rebuttal. So in the opening government side, they talk about that because those people those talented people they stay in the country, then the country will grow better. However, we believe that the country is firstly the country should raise the quality of working space and working environment and the whole opportunities. Then the people will eventually want to stay inside the country, but it is not because you force your citizen to stay inside. You aren't forcing your citizen to stay inside the country. Then you are trying to make the environment become better. Then your citizen will want to stay inside. Yes.
How would your so-called developed countries on your side of the house actually be able to improve their current workforce if so many talented people are leaving the country?
In our side, we believe that it is more important for those talented people to have the freedom of going to the place they want, rather than knowing how to improve it. And my second speaker will elaborate more about it. And now going to the framing. So first is developing countries. And in our side, we believe that the developing countries is countries that need a lot of growth for like economy, industry, and others. And in political and economical aspect, it is not that stable. And so it means that the people, the citizens inside the country don't have a very high incentive for them to stay inside the country. And second is brain drain. So we believe that it is like the countries who have brain drain is country that they need a lot of people, but they don't have it. And so those countries very low. Okay.
So basically, we mandate or ban something when it's significantly needed to society. Why do you think this motion is not thing that we need to the current society to develop nations?
Okay.
So we mandate or ban something when it's significantly needed to society. Why do you think the motion is not significantly needed to society?
Okay. Because we believe that for those citizens, it is their right to go to a place that is better for their self-care, and it is those talented people's right to choose a place that they want to go inside, and they want to want to help really want to stay inside their own country and really work hard and like shine themselves. So if you're only forcing them to stay inside, in ourselves we believe that it won't really help them, and it won't really help the current status quo, and the workers won't really have the incentive to really work very hard. Yes. And move on to the first argument. So we believe that it is morally correct to have the freedom to migrate and for those citizens. And we believe that those citizens, especially if they are very talented, then they should shine in a better place and in a better opportunities. And
Yeah.
okay.
Do you think people shining is more important than lifting developing countries out of chaos, out of civil war?
Okay, so in our side, we believe that they are people, they are individual, different people, and it is very important for them to having the right to really, no thank you. It is important for them to really stand out and shine, and there's another possibility is that if they shine in another place with a better working environment and a better working opportunities, maybe they can bring the reputation of their country back and help their country more in another aspect, in another chance in like working opportunities. Okay, and moving back to migrants. So in ourselves we believe that the country should raise their equality first of helping their country. Then those citizens will want to move back and work together. And so in conclusion, we talk about the framing and also why it is important for the citizens to have the freedom to migrate. And I'm proud to oppose.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you very much, Leader of Opposition, for that speech. We're going to continue with the next speaker for opening government, the DPM. You're here.
Is everybody ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Then my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So here's a brief framing on how my overall speech will go. I will start with some rebuttals before reinforcing my Prime Minister's point and then adding my extensions. So first of all, the first thing that comes out from the opening opposition now is that it is morally incorrect to force people to stay and restrict it in their own country. However, do you know an example of this happening in our society? It happened during COVID. People were required to stay at home during lockdown for the sake of others, and people didn't like it. But do you know what happened? It benefited society because by forcing people to stay in their homes, it lessened the impact of COVID, and people were able to once again go outside. So we must weigh the different sides. Their house, which thinks short-term feelings such as inconveniences of not being able to go outside, versus our world, where we actually allow people to grow developing countries and make the world a better place. So now I would like to start off with some rebuttals. So they've mentioned that the countries should raise their own benefits of workforce instead of imposing travel restrictions. However, they neither provide the justifications nor mechanisms on how this will happen. I offered a POI on asking their mechanisms, and their response was that talented people have the freedom to go outside other countries. So they don't answer the question on how their side will be able to help developing countries actually rise out of that poverty and restricted force. They've also mentioned that citizens will not have the incentive to stay nor work hard if they are restricted and forced to contribute to the country. However, here I would like to explain on why they will feel motivated to stay if this restriction is imposed. So, the motion states that developing countries facing a brain drain will be imposed on a travel restriction. Let me highlight the word developing countries. These people will realize that, okay, if I rise out my developing country into a first world country that will prosper, then the future generation, which will be my children, my grandchildren, they will have the opportunity to not only immigrate to a country, but also stay and flourish in a country that has risen up from the depths of poverty. This is the motivation that will strive them. They will think, if I can lift my developing country out of the title of developing, then my future generation will have the opportunity to actually decide for themselves whether or not they want to stay and help cultivate it even more, or go to another country and stay there. And now I would like to emphasize on my main point. Okay.
So do you think just by losing all the smart people, you can change the whole country's condition?
Yes, because what's happening during a brain drain is that all the talented people, all the minds that could possibly innovate, add economic industries to this country are being taken away from the prospect of better countries. I will later emphasize this on one of my sub-points. However, in an answer to your POI, it is necessary that these people, who obviously are more talented and more smart and will obviously bring more benefits to the country, stay, so that we can actually see this country rise up and be compared to other countries such as the United Kingdom or the United States of America. Now onto my main point. Why is travel restriction needed? Is it morally justified, and will it actually be better on our side of the world or theirs? So the reason brain drain happens is because the citizens of the country see other people leaving because of the developing status, and in turn they will leave as well. And this happens because of something called mob mentality. When people see other people do something, they will be incentivized to do it. Because after all, if the vast majority follows it, it must be correct, right? However, in most cases of these, this is exactly why developing countries stay developing countries. Because there are not enough people able to reinforce it and help build these industries. And then they'll think, oh, I should leave because this country is never going to grow. Everybody's leaving. I should also leave as well to save myself. And this is a very bad mentality because this is what keeps the ever-widening gap of rich and poor. Developing countries, the people who actually have a chance to help bring it up, are leaving to other countries, and this makes it so that there will never be an actual power balance between countries. And why do we not want developing countries? That is one of the main issues. What is so bad about having developing countries in our status right now? So here are some things that encourage developing countries. Exploitation, such as the fast fashion industry in Bangladesh, where workers have to work perhaps 12 through 7 hours, do not get proper wages, get abused, get assaulted. The crime rate in these developing countries is also significantly higher. There are more mobs, there's more murder, there's more chaos, and poverty is a large part of most of these developing countries. This is all bad because having a power gap between these countries means that larger countries are able to freely manipulate them, and this could lead to war. So as we see in the Cold War, because the United States and America and Russia did not want to directly fight, when they instigated in proxy wars, such as different wars. So they provided support to smaller countries and manipulated them. Russia would support one side, while the USA would support the other, and this harms all the stakeholders provided, because these two countries will forever be backed by two equally powerful things, and then the war will keep going on, and this will lead to more debts, more poverty, and more gaps between the manipulation between countries.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talented people doesn't necessarily, like, keeping talented people doesn't have the right relationship to, like, solving these ethnic conflicts and religious conflicts and wars.
Oh no, right now I am talking about why we do not want developing countries, and then for a link between it is if we keep these talented people in these developing countries, they will lift the developing countries out of the status of developing into more advanced, and by lifting it to more advanced countries, then these things that I just stated right now will not occur as often, and it will create a better society. That's my point. And so now onto my final point: the employment imbalance between these countries. So in developing countries, because so many people are leaving, they do not have enough workforce to complete these industries. However, and in the countries receiving these immigrants, there's a large number of people who are unemployed, and this is not only the natives; it is also the immigrants. Because when there's only like 2 or 3 large countries or powerful countries that people see as, oh, this is the best place to go when you immigrate. So there's so much competition that in turn more people are at a disadvantage than people who are at a benefit. Because of so many immigrants going to these certain selected countries, the workforce will be so imbalanced that these people who immigrate might not even have the chance to better themselves. On the opposition side of the world, they have no way to help lift these developing countries out of the mud, out of the trenches, out of the poverty. They will not be able to solve this imbalance of power gap between the countries, nor will they be able to fully justify and explain how unemployment will not occur on either side. So it is fairly obvious which side you want to support. It's obviously the opening government, which we state clearly and have simple but justified mechanisms on why it is so important that developing countries do not remain developing, and how all our points stated from my Prime Minister and me as a Deputy Prime Minister will actually help them. Thank you, and I'm very proud to be part of this.
Okay, thank you very much, DPM, for that speech. To conclude the opening half of this debate, we now call on the Deputy Leader of Opposition from opening opposition. Here.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So first off, I'm going to give some rebuttals. The opening of government keeps mentioning that during COVID, during lockdown, people were forced to stay inside their homes, and yet it benefited society as a whole. But the thing that's different from this to these travel restrictions is that during COVID, people were forced to stay inside their homes because of their own safety. They were forced to stay because they knew that if they got out and if they contracted the virus, then they would possibly face life dangers. And so then they had the incentive to stay at home, and then they wouldn't have that much hatred towards the government when the lockdown was canceled. Okay, and so but on our side. But on the government side, they're forcing people and they're forcing people to sacrifice their own health and their sanity and their choice to move to different countries just for the country's benefits. Because you cannot see any short-term gain from these people staying in their countries because of how bad the environments. No, thank you. Of these developing countries are. Because right now, these developing countries they have they don't have any work opportunities, and they cannot because of the government side keeps mentioning that the crime rates and there's chaos in these developing countries. So why are you forcing these talented people to stay inside these countries when they cannot see any sort of short-term gain from this? And because of that, there will be no incentive for them to actually work hard towards the development of the country. Yes.
You said there's no short-term gains. However, does your opposition side have any long-term solutions to how we can reach developing countries?
Yes, I will mention that later. Okay. So yeah, and there's another thing that people they don't immigrate into other countries just for fun, right? They need to have some kind of incentive for them to want to immigrate to another country. Those reasons could be that they cannot the money that they're earning in that country right now, the situation of their life in that country is not enough for them to maintain their well-being and the well-being of their families. So then they have the reason to want to go to another country to make more money and then support their family better or support their own health and stuff better. But on the government side, they're forcing these people to stay in these countries that have no working opportunities, and they cannot even feed themselves in these countries. No, thank you. So that way you're just wasting the talents of these people. And and I will mention the incentive for and right now onto my argument. So on our side, the positive impacts of this of not having this travel restriction is that citizens will move overseas and they'll work in environments that is good for them, so they can earn more money and they'll work towards their self-growth. And in the original compared to the original country, they'll learn more skills and more techniques from these developed countries that they can bring back into their developing country. No, thank you. When they become more successful. And the incentive is that they might have some family members that are in these developing countries that they have a sense of responsibility towards them. That when they go, when they earn more money and from these developed countries, then they can immigrate. They can move back to these. Okay.
But what about the people who do not have the means of immigration? Are you forcing them to stay in a developing country simply because the talented pool wanted to benefit themselves?
Wait, I can't hear.
Okay, so you're saying that the talent pool can benefit themselves. However, what about the people who do not have the means of immigration? They do not have the resources to immigrate. Are you forcing them to stay in a developing country?
No, we mentioned that the incentive for most people to immigrate is that they don't have the resources in their own country, so that's why they want to immigrate. If you don't have resources in your own country, then you'll want to, because there's no way you can support your family and your well-being inside that own country. So then you have the incentive to immigrate. So the people who actually immigrate are those who do not have the resources and cannot support themselves in their own country. So yeah, developed countries into their into the country, so that way the developing country can grow better and they can learn from other developed countries and become more developed. Okay, and yeah, so yeah, and
Mila,
okay.
can you provide any justification and mechanism on your side on why they would choose to return to the country, even though my Prime Minister has already provided examples on why they would not go back?
Oh, well, as I have mentioned, they may have family members inside these developing countries. Because if you immigrate, you cannot bring every single one of your family members into the developed country that you are immigrating into. So you will still have a sense of responsibility to go back into your home country and actually help those people who are related to you in the yeah. So that provides one incentive for you to actually go back into your home country after immigrating to another country. Yeah. Okay. And so on our side, we're not. So that on the government side, they're forced to stay in their country, and because they have no incentive to work in that country where crime rates are high and there's chaos and there's war, and you're forcing people to stay in these kinds of environments that's not good for them, then there will be like low productivity and you won't have any incentive to work. And so the country will actually not have much growth if you force these people to stay in their home countries.
In your
And so-
immigration.
Order.
Okay, and so in conclusion, on our side, we actually give people the incentive to, we provide an incentive for people to move back to their home country after immigrating, and they'll also have more, they'll bring back new techniques and skills from other countries, from developed countries back into their home countries to help the growth of their home country. And for all these reasons above, I'm about to close.
Okay, alright, thank you very much. Dilo for that speech. That ends the opening half. We're going to start closing up this debate by first calling on the first team, closing government, member of government, whenever you are ready. Here.
George, I want you to imagine a land right after war, a land full of chaos, powerless fear. Now please imagine a city full of skyscrapers with people enjoying their lives. That's the difference that my homeland South Korea made just in a few decades by utilizing the motion, by utilizing this mechanism that the government probably suggests. No many people at that time left their land. Everyone just worked hard. They brought other nations' techniques and they utilized it, which benefited their nations. And that is what motion says. That is the mechanism that closing will bring to you. Okay. So opposition, you think that in that time South Korea had any job opportunities? No, they just tried. And that's the result that we have. The result that the motion has. Okay. So we also agree. We admit the fact that this motion is a short-term solution. But this solution, this short-term solution, can solve every problem that this developing nation has, this developing nation contains in the current status quo. Now, throughout this half debate, we can say that side government just overwhelmed opposition. Okay, so basically, to analyze this entire debate, opposition just claimed and repeated the point of the importance of freedom. They really wanted to emphasize the part where citizens have the freedom to express their talent. Now, since this was the lacking point that government had, since they had no contribution, we'd like to give a unique contribution as the closing government. Okay, so basically we'd like to emphasize that when it's significantly needed to society, we just do it despite there are many problems. Imagine primary education. We know, do you even get to choose when would you be educated? No, you just go to school and you just get the primary education. Why is it so? We mandate that because that is what is significantly needed to the current status quo, right? Okay, so basically we like to emphasize that at least in our world, at least in government's world, the developing nations strive. They have the opportunity, and they would actually they would fulfill the significantly significantly needed. I'll explain why it's significantly needed later. But then in opposition's roles, they have to. But then in opposition's role, only the minority, the few citizens, they would have the ability who have the ability to migrate. They would live happily ever after. They would have the chance to express their talents, the things that they are saying. But then the developing nations themselves would be rotten for years and decades and decades. Now, two extensions that we're going to give as a closing opposition. One, we're going to tell you again the reason of justification within sophisticated analyze, okay? Analyze one, we're going to talk about the need of mandate and why is it so, okay? As I said, Josh, when do we mandate or ban something? We do it because it's just needed to society. This thing is just basically needed to the developing nation. We just need this on the current status quo. If we don't have this, as I said, it's going to just bring an outcome of failure, etc., that I'm going to explain on my second extension. Okay, well, my another analysis is another sophisticated extension point that is regarding the premise of the developing nations. So basically, what this developing nation needs, they're just a lacking country, lacking nation compared to other nations who has lacking points of economy, politics, etc. They're not actually fully developed as it currently states. It's a nation that's developing. But then, if the brain drain, if the people, if the labor all out, if the smart labor, if the the physical labors, if they are just not out, if they're just out in the nation, they don't come back, then it'll just bring nothing, right? So that's the model of opposition's role, okay? Some people would be happy. They'd be happy because they can express their talents. But they can't actually, but the developing nation, they'd be rotten forever because they don't have the labor. They don't have people who can stand, who can actually help that development. Moving on to my second constructive point. I would like to talk about the sophisticated analysis of how will our world work. Now, since the opening bench just told you about the broad mechanism of how it happened, we would like to dig into this more detailed place. We would like to give you a sophisticated analysis of how this mechanism would work. In my introduction, I already told you that South Korea grew like this. Singapore grew like this. Every nation's here. They actually developed in this sort of way. Every nation's in Asia, like the Asians for tiger. Every nation's had grew in this way. This is the perfect example that we like to see. This mechanism would apply on every single place. The motion says it's restricting, not banning, right? So people, they have the rights to go out and come back. They have to come back. That's the mechanism that we introduced. Okay, so they would go out and they would bring lots of techniques like just like Hyundai did by the ship techniques, etc. So they would bring that things in and they would actually form another industry or industry that's similar to the things that they've learned, okay? Which would bring a significant development just like other nations did. We don't get the reason why they say that would actually work. Yes, miss?
North Korea, which restricts their immigration, did their country really become better and don't have the chaos inside their society?
Beg your pardon?
North Korea, which restricts their immigration, did their country become better and don't have chaos in their society?
I don't get the reason why you're talking about North Korea, Josh. North Korea, it's not only banning immigration, they're banning everything, right? So it's just absolutely different with South Korea and other examples, okay? So we like to again emphasize that this mechanism that we introduced happened, and this mechanism that we introduced was just a perfect example, and there's lots of nations that actually demonstrated this part, okay? Josh, finally I would like to compare the points that we had and the opposition had. So we'd like to compare the points that closing government had and the entire opposition side had, okay? So in closing government, we basically brought we basically told you what is the significant need in this nation that nobody actually proved, okay? We told you that we gave you an example, the reason why this kind of things are needed when it comes to developing nations, right? Which is the reason why it justifies the motion. On the other hand, opposition, they give a POI of North Korea and they actually just repeated the point of freedom, right? We also admit the fact that freedom is important, but when it comes to developing nations, there must be some things that is prioritized just before when they talk about this freedom, etc. And now before I move on, I would like to again emphasize that this mechanism had ran over and over, and it was like successful for every time. Now it's time to now as a government, we'd like to teach developing nation the way that we did, the way that every single nation did to bring this thrive to the nation. Very proud to propose.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Member of Gov, for that speech. To introduce the last team in this debate, we now call on the Member of Opposition for the closing opposition. Here.
later on I'll explain. And they also fail to justify how government's intervention is legitimate here. They also fail to understand how developing nations have actually work and how people mentalities actually are. Before I move to my arguments, three pieces of rebuttals. Firstly, I see that the xenophobia argument raised from opening Gulf has not been responded to. Thus, I would like to deal with it. Firstly, we say that xenophobia exists anyway. People who may not have such an empathy for other people coming from other nations will already have this xenophobia, whether or not there is this immigration thing existing. This xenophobia will exist anyway. And secondly, you said how people are largely being discriminated when they move to other countries, and we say that's not true under this debate, because what we are talking about is the open teams of demonstration. It's oftentimes these smart people, due to the motion being set by Beijing, moving to other countries. A lot of the times they have been successful, and therefore moving on to the third point of this rebuttal, that is they oftentimes heighten the representation of their own countries in these in the foreign countries, and these examples have been over and over again proven to be better for example, Asian people moving to America, raising representation, and actually being able to cross this barrier between ethnicities and to actually solve this conflict instead of just keeping these people locked down. They're locked in their country, and the media of these already developed countries are just going to see, oh, these countries are so terrible, they're developing, they're having a lot of humanitarian issues, blah, blah, blah. They only see that on media, and they see that, oh, these people are so lazy, so stupid, whatever. Under our side, we say that we allow them to give representation to their country when they go abroad, and it is so much better in increasing understanding of each other. Therefore, this belief does not stand. And even if you think that they stand, we still don't know why you are ignoring people's personal preferences. For some people, it's just worth it, hearing some discriminatory speeches, one or two sentences from your coworkers every day because they want to chase their dreams. We do not see why government is able to just say, oh, they think that xenophobia is such a big deal for everyone. It's such a big deal that they are willing to give up their dreams, for example, to work in an industry that currently does not exist in developing nations. I would like to reinforce that this oftentimes is the truth because in developing nations, for example, some scientific research does not exist. Second piece of rebuttal is how they think developed nations have so many problems such as humanitarian issues. And we say two things. Firstly, regarding the very terrible humanitarian aid. 2 points to this. Firstly, we believe that just keeping in smart people there does not necessarily solve the problem. And later on, I'll also explain why. Having these smart educated people motivated to stay in the country themselves rather than being forced to makes it so much better and effective. And secondly, we think that what they need here is humanitarian aid, which we better get on our side. Later on, I'll explain why in my argument. Thus, moving on to my argument.
Good.
My main argument here is how we justify the freedom of choice and the freedom of these people over the development of these countries. I'll first talk about the development of these countries. 2 points to this argument. Firstly, we think development can be done with many, many other alternatives, which in many cases work better on our side. 2 points to this. Firstly, there are a lot of stronger countries for humanitarian aid for several reasons, for political alliances, and diplomacy or whatever. They help these countries. For example, America helps a lot of countries in Africa. These strong countries, they come with foreign economic support. And second, we tell you why this is more effective under our side, because these developing countries actually look better optics-wise for 2 reasons. Firstly, because they're following basic democracy rules. They're not just locking down people's freedom of choice, and therefore they are following the principles of democracy, so being more respected by these strong nations. And secondly, as I said before, they get more representation under our side, so that the strong countries can actually see that the people here also have the ability to go out to study, to use their talent, and actually do some contribution to their world. I'll take a POI.
How is there a lack of representation on our side when my Prime Minister has clearly stated that they will be allowed to venture out to study, but they are obligated to come back?
Because they're not able to actually do long-term contributions. For example, to work in NASA, to work in these places, to actually shine with their talent to contribute to long-term needs rather than staying there 4 years and being forced to come back and not know what they would do. Because all the stuff they study there, they don't even have the experimental lab there back in your hometown. How you are going to achieve your dream? It's just impossible. And second point of this argument is to what extent is development actually solved under your side, right? We say that, I'm going to more comprehensively explain how it means actually go back to these countries. Firstly, they go to other countries for self-realization, to achieve their dreams. And oftentimes, as history has proven, they oftentimes feel the gratefulness and they come back to their country. For example, we believe the opening teams have already talked say to a distinction here. It's how it's morally nice to go back to your country and to contribute back to the community you originally come from, but it's not a moral obligation, as I'll later explain to you out here. It's a thing of personal choice. And that's for the ungrateful people, the smart people who don't care about what other people are doing. Whether we love them or not, we think it doesn't really make a difference because they don't want to contribute to the society. Anyway, moving on to my freedom of choice part. We think that the opening teams have all standard on the utilitarian framework, right? They've all standard on how there's a better outcome there. We've already explained how it isn't necessarily a better outcome on your side, but even if you take them at their best and say that yes, they get better outcomes, I'm going to explain what this consequentialism idea essentially is like conflicts with dignity and what that's really bad, and it's not in the government's right to do so. Two layers of this argument. Firstly, we want to compare how the COVID example with these big decisions and life altering decisions. It's one thing to stay in your home for 3 months, and it's another thing to do something that differs your 30 years of your life. We think this is a big decision, life altering, and moving on to the second layer. We think people have the right to make these choices after life altering choices. For 2 reasons. Firstly, they have the autonomy, they have the agency to do so, and governments are inherently obliged to protect these. And secondly, people have different ideas of a good life. But some people want to go and chase their science streams or whatever. It's different. Not everyone's sense of good life is contributing to your own society. That's not justified. And layer 3 is how it's more independent. You are born in this developing country. Let's compare someone who has an IQ of 150 in Africa and someone who's in the US. Why is it justified that unproportionately people in Africa cannot go and chase your dreams and people in the US can? They're born with the same pattern, and a lot of times they're like put in the same effort. Let's just say, because like take this example of private schools, right? We don't think it's justified to lock valedictorians and like force them to come back to the school to teach just because they live in school to further whatever. This is what we bring. The impact we bring to this is how we essentially destroy closing government, because we tell them how it's not just because there's a need of the government to do so, we can do it. Firstly, we already told them how the alternative means there's no need to do so, and secondly, we'll tell them how it's not justified. Therefore, I will come to your thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for that speech. To end the case beside government, we call on the government whip. You're here.
Start in 3, 2, 1. In short, this debate was basically something that I would call as basically a conversation of Iron Man and Brute. So the Iron Man side, which is all government side, would most likely give a more sophisticated explanation as well. Brutes cannot properly form words, which basically clearly expresses the case of the opposition side, as they have just repeated the word I am Groot, but in this case in this case, it can be expressed as they need freedom and basically the word freedom and the word democracy. And we additionally believe that both gov side and opposition side at the end of the day has the same goal, and that goal can be specified as helping these developing nations advance into a developed nation. And why did our country we believe that the government bench had a much clearer goal and much clearer mechanization in order to how to get this developing nation to the developing nation. As on the other hand, with the opposition side, their explanation was subpar, and the word freedom cannot fix every single factor, as already proven by government bench, and I will prove that and restate that again in my whip speech. Now moving on to our two questions. First of all, we believe that this motion is crucial towards every single stakeholder provided by our side. First of all, we believe that, and we have specified this many times, especially by the member governments, and we mandate something, and we change the accessibility on something when needed. For example, primary education and lockdown during COVID provided by the opening government. This is basic reasoning this is the basic reasoning provided by the government side that something needs to be banned. Something needs to be banned or mandated when it has a greater impact or it has a negative impact towards society. Like we believe that. Additionally, we believe that the closing opposition believes that characterized that citizens will be locked in their own nation. The previous speaker has already stated and elaborated towards this point, which I will elaborate once more. Additionally, the opposition bench, especially the leader of the opposition of the opening bench, has repeatedly emphasized and put an emphasis on how the freedom is the best factor and which freedom is the best factor, and we believe that this can be overridden easily if the nation that we are talking about ceases to exist because of the opposition side's inability to cope and create a solution to actually properly benefit this nation, in which I believe that they have not provided, I believe that they are yet to provide any proper solution in order to help these developing nations advance into better nation. And continuing on, we believe that the freedom argument can be overridden by logic provided by government bench, which was restriction can be justified if the factor harms society at large, or the restriction leads to further benefit society that outweighs the thing that we currently have. And we believe that the humans are simple creatures. Hell, we're believing that stuff are true because everyone does it, and this is stuff are true and because everyone does it. We believe that this logic can apply to our arguments too. And now tying back to the developing country, we believe that the opposition bench has, and I have already stated that the opposition bench has kept on emphasizing the fact that there will be somehow an effect that every single citizen will start somehow having hatred for said nation and will be convinced and incentivized to immediately leave the nation because of something that they didn't specify, did not properly mechanize, which they just threw in the debate.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll take it right now. Yeah.
We were told how there are many other alternatives for these countries to develop. Under this circumstance, please justify how your utilitarian standpoint will justify.
A tad bit slowly, please.
We already told you how there are many alternatives for developing countries. And under this circumstance, please justify why it's legitimate to affect people's life altering big choices.
We believe that even though you have stated many, even though we believe that you have stated many factors, we believe that the only properly mechanized part was how this will like just affect freedom and democracy at large. And if it was specified further, I would have addressed it, and this would have been a larger part of the debate. But yet you still failed to develop it further. And additionally, the opposition bench is basically saying that said developing nations will basically stop forever. And OP is basically asking and requesting for poor developing nations to stay developing and stay down on the ground. And the OP is offering basically making a developing nation that it exists because it has land. This is unjust for two reasons. And as you have said, this motion mechanism is already proven to work. And we would like to specify and further add on that not all nations started as the best country. For example, the big three, the US, UK, and Russia all started as a small nation without any proper social systems put in as specified by the previous speaker. And we believe that this has yet to be engaged, and we believe that the opposition bench is just basically agreeing. And B, opposition bench is basically suggesting to abandon a nation by incentivizing and making all these people leave. We believe that letting a nation rot is just unjust, and we believe that, and as I've said, this every nation started the process like this. And now moving on to our last clash. We believe that and now the reason why the closing government weighed out opening government. Now the opening government has provided has provided a really broad mechanism with some justification, and we believe that the closing government has converted this reasoning as a sophisticated mechanism, we believe that we have provided many reasons. We believe that we have provided further reasons and supported properly mechanized the opening government's case, which has slight flaws in it. Again, we still emphasize, yeah.
Alright, thank you very much, Gavin, for that speech. We're going to go and call on the last speaker of this debate for this school's semifinals with the opposition whip. Here.
So my speech will start in 3, 2, and 1. Before I start my speech, I have 2 rebuttals. My first rebuttal is that both of the opposition sides didn't engage in our argument about how there are other alternatives in which the countries can develop, and why these alternatives can work out better and are more morally correct than the way of keeping the talented people inside the country and not letting them immigrate. So now I'm going to get to my questions and way to compare our side with the opening government and closing government. Their side focuses on how the talented people can play a crucial role in improving the country's development, and also how they can help the government and they can improve the country. But however, they only talk about the outcome of the country, and they didn't talk about that the people didn't have the moral obligation to help the country improve. Yes.
Miss, I gave you 2 minutes talking about South Korea in order to prove that this method is the perfect thing, the perfect alternative. In regard to this, do you have any single thoughts?
As a response, I would like to say just because that you are able to achieve something with this kind of way, it doesn't mean that the people are morally obliged to help the country in order to develop, because that might not be their personal ideas, and it might not contribute to the personal development, which I will later bring out in my classes. So continuing with my speech, comparing our side with both of the government cases, not only our side provided the alternative of humanitarian aid, for example, foreign economy support and representation by creating a decent look about how a country is. For example, creating the cover that you are very democratic, and actually being it can actually lead to more foreign support, and that can also help develop the country. And it might even be more helpful than just keeping the talented people inside. So now, continuing with our comparison with opening opposition. So how we differ from the opening opposition is that first of all, we point out and prove why it's unjustified. Yes.
Primary education, it basically denies your freedom to choose because it just makes you get educated in that age. So are you opposing to this also?
No. So my response is that this is about personal development and about what they want for their future. And it might not necessarily be about the country, because some people might have their own dreams and things that they want to follow, and it doesn't have to be necessarily related to the country, and the country has no right to keep them and to violate human dignity. So back to my speech. How we differ from opening opposition is that we point out and justify, and point out and prove that why keeping the people is unjustified. All they say is that you shouldn't keep them because they will be less motivated, and that is not their dream and what they want. But yes.
Why would they be less motivated?
Excuse me?
Why would they be less motivated? As a DPM, I fully explained why they would be motivated to actually lift the developing country out of poverty. So can you provide any significant responses to that argument?
Yes. Like my previous speaker mentioned, people have other developments that they want, and that it might not be necessarily related to the country. So it is likely that they are not going to be willing to help the country because the country is stopping them from achieving what they truly want. So and also I'm going to weigh this idea against yours. So So continuing with the opening opposition comparison, we better prove why it's unjustified because all they did was skip the surface about how it will stop the people from wanting to be motivated and about how it's morally incorrect. But however, we provide clear examples and other things about how about how this is going to violate the people's right and also how people's personal development is not always related to the country. We provided clear examples. Also,
morality is heavily based on how beneficial something is it's beneficial to a certain group. So how is improving the livelihood of developing countries not a moral obligation that people have to take?
So our side believes that personal development is more important, and also our side did mention something about by going to other countries, by going to other countries and learning, they can always help from another perspective. They don't have to necessarily be shut inside the country to help the country. They have other ways to interact with the country's economic and development too. Also, we provided clear alternatives about foreign economy support and countries' representations. For example, which is all linked to humiliation aid, and that can also that can also like fix the problem, and that doesn't violate any of the human dignity and human rights. So therefore our side provided a better case than opening opposition, and our side's ideas are more morally correct than both of the government. Yes.
Okay, so you said that people of other countries are punishing humanitarian aid. However, that is the status quo. So why do we still have developing countries if your so-called alternative will actually work? It hasn't.
So even though these alternatives will not, these alternatives are just other ways for this to work. So this is just another way where this can, where like I'm doing the previous question. So like these are just ways for the other countries to support them and make them better. By using these ideas over time, the developing countries can soon be fully developed. It is just whether it's long term or short term, it still works. So as a summary, our side provided clear alternatives and proof about like the human dignity part, which is why we explain better than opening opposition. Comparing our side to OG and CG, it is because that their side violates human dignity. And within all these reasons, I'm proud to oppose.
Alright, thank you very much, Alfred, for that speech, and thank everyone for the wonderful debate. One more round of applause for the school semifinalists. Go ahead and please cross the house, leave the room. This is an out round, so please bring your stuff and leave the room. Thank you guys.
쓰리.
아 정연서 내 옆에 줘야지.
Leave the room, guys. Leave the room, everyone. Leave the room, everyone. Bring your conversations outside, thank everyone.
아 이렇게.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, stuff.
Yo, that response to her PO.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Please go outside, my friends. Please go outside. Take the conversations outside, my friends. Thank you very much.
Can we leave our stuff inside?
No, bring out
Bring your
everything.
stuff.
Bring
Bring your
everything.
stuff and leave. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Don't take so many.
But I can't take 0 POIs either.
Just take one or two.
How do I know what they're going to pass?
Just say no.
What if they add something that kills them? Did I actually kill my face?
Oh, I can do that.
Did I kill your face? I think I
So
killed your face.
surely I'm gonna stop stream for obvious reasons.
Stop the
Yeah.
stream. Or, yeah.
That would be funny.
Definitely.
Everyone's just like tuning in, watching the
Yeah,
delay.
it's actually stopped.
Luigi Alcanis is live.
Yeah, that. Welcome to our final discussion.
How am I sure that is?